There's just something I love about the Missouri countryside. The rolling hills and fields, the rural highways and little country lanes, postcard perfect barns and farms, and of course, the little towns. Especially this one. Welcome to one of my favorite places, Marceline, Missouri. There's just something nice, something pleasing about this little town. Many years ago, on my first visit here, my friend Tyler said to me, this is the type of town you would love to stay and live in forever. But there's just something special about it. And Tyler wasn't the only one who felt that way, because you know who else agreed? Walt Disney. Marceline was the place Walt considered his hometown. And even though he only lived here for about 5.5 years, this small town made such a big impression on him. He would later say, more things of importance happened to me in Marceline than have happened since or are likely to in the future. In fact, Walt Disney loved this town so much, he built his own fantasy version of it. And so Marceline, Missouri became the inspiration for Main Street USA at Disneyland. A place that's charmed and inspired millions of people. Of course, Disneyland's Main Street is a little more embellished than Kansas Avenue here in Marceline, Missouri. Walt's artists and designers took a lot of elements from other Main Street USA type towns, but to Walt Disney personally, Main Street USA always represented a fantasy version of his childhood in Marceline. Of course, back when Walt was growing up here in the first decade of the 20th century, Marceline did look a lot more like Main Street USA at Disneyland than it does today. I mean, don't get me wrong, there was never a castle down at the end of the road, but the buildings were much more ornate back in Walt's day, when this was a busy, bustling Missouri Railroad town. You can see what Walt's Marceline looked like from this old-timey postcard available at the museum here. Young Walt Disney would have encountered early automobiles, meeting horses and wagons, all kinds of townies bumping shoulders with the farmers coming in from the country. Oh yeah, back before everyone had a car and they all had to live a lot closer together in these towns, Marceline was a very different place. Before air conditioning and TV, heck, before even radio was on the scene, Walt was inspired by plays at the local theater, and people from miles and miles around would gather here in E.P. Ripley Park to hear live music at the old bandstand. Oh yeah, what an exciting time. Gas-powered automobiles and electric light were just making inroads into the country out here. But of course, back then in 1909, 1910, the railroad was still very much at the heart of things here. This is the place where Walt Disney fell in love with trains. The whole reason Marceline sprouted up in the first place was by and for the Santa Fe Railroad, the very same company that would sponsor the first Disneyland Railroad. And of course, to this very day, one of the engines at Disneyland is named the E.P. Ripley, just like this park, who was the president of the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railroad. Think about it, this is where Walt Disney's love of trains began, which means this is really where the Disneyland Railroad was born. To Walt Disney, the town of Marceline and trains were inseparable, which is why whenever he came back for a visit, he preferred to come by railroad. And the station that much older Walt Disney would arrive at is still here, now known as the Walt Disney Hometown Museum. As a lifelong Disneyland and Walt Disney fan, I try to come back here at least once a year. But last year, things didn't go according to plan. So it's been a while, and I am looking forward to this. Oh, this museum gets better every time I come here. Of course, being an old Santa Fe Railroad station, there is plenty of old railroad memorabilia inside. But let's face it, the real treasure is the more than 3,000 Disney family related artifacts. Old family photos, letters, all kinds of displays about Walt's time in this town. And to me, the coolest thing of all is this. Inside of this simple display case is an old school desk, one that Walt Disney himself came back and identified as his desk from the first grade. Think about it, this is the exact slab of wood that first grade Walt Disney did his writing on. And not just on paper. If you look closely, it seems that young Walt Disney had a taste for vandalism. He carved his initials into this desk twice. Just to make sure, I guess. Wow, Walt Disney's early art. And he came back and confirmed that was his himself. Another great thing above the desk are some vintage Disneyland flags. The official orange flag was donated by Walt to Marceline's Walt Disney Elementary School, the only other place allowed to fly that official Disneyland flag. And the cool thing is they now sell small versions of it in the gift shop here. You can't even get those at Disneyland. And speaking of Disneyland, of course, course, there are countless relics here from the Disney theme parks. And of course, innumerable pieces of Mickey Mouse merchandise. I always love looking at that kind of stuff. But the best part of coming to this museum is definitely learning about the Disney family. There are displays about Walt Disney's mother Flora and his father Elias, along with their handwritten letters, and even old Elias Disney's actual toolbox. The vast majority of these rare artifacts in here, the personal letters, the rare photographs, the Walt Disney related newspaper clippings, all came to this museum via the collection of his closest childhood friend, his sister Ruth. Look at here. Here are her personal scrapbooks with pictures of young Walt, or Walter as he was known then. And I gotta admit, he was quite a looker in them days. Wow. Look at this. There are personal letters from Walt to Ruth in here, as well as plenty of letters from the studio with very cool stationery. They even have the actual TV purchased for Ruth to watch the opening of Disneyland on, since she didn't feel like traveling there and dealing with the crowds. Oh, if she could only see the opening of Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. That is so cool, seeing those early pictures of Walt and Roy that were in Ruth's personal collection. And something else that's blowing my mind right now is that this case has some recollections from the locals about the Disney family's time in Marceline. It is very cool to learn so much about not just Walt Disney's family, but this whole Marceline period of his life, which, although it was short, was really his only chunk of pure childhood. By the time Walt was 10 or 11 years old and the family left Marceline, he was put to work delivering newspapers before and after school, sometimes in the snow. He had to earn his living, even all the way up through high school. It wasn't much of a childhood, which is exactly why the Marceline days meant so much to him, and why he considered this place his home. Of course, let's not forget about Roy Disney, who also lived here for a little while. There would have been no Disney Studios or Disneyland without Roy Disney. Or Uncle Robert, who first put up Walt in LA. Not only was Uncle Robert's house ground zero for the Disney Studios in California, turns out he also owned some land in Marceline, and apparently was the one who suggested that Elias and company move here in the first place. Oh, look at little Walt and his sister Ruth. Oh, and let's not forget about the other brothers, like Herbert here, who was a mailman, or Ray Disney, the one who never learned to drive a car, always rode a bike, and sold insurance. Hey, it's me, Ray Disney. You want to buy some insurance? Okay, he probably didn't sound like that. Now, of course, over the years, we've been here a few times before. But because they keep making changes to this museum, oh, and Mickey, it is always worth coming back for another visit. Just make sure the first thing you do is stop in here, because on most days, it closes at 4. Now, remember how I was talking about by the time they built Disneyland and Main Street, Marceline was kind of a shadow of its former self? Well, no one was more disappointed about that than Walt himself. And it's a little known fact that right before he died, Walt not only had the Disney company snapping up all that land in Florida that would become Disney World, but was also steadily trying to acquire land here in Marceline to create an attraction here. In Walt Disney's own words, I have one unfulfilled ambition, which is to buy the farm my father once owned in Marceline. Check this out. This sketch was on Walt Disney's desk the day he died. A concept sketch he drew himself for part of his Marceline project. Look at that. There would have been shops and a motel with an inside pool, a barn dance and a cafe, a fishing lake. He wanted to create basically sort of another Main Street, a replica of small town life as he remembered it in this town. In this town. Look at this. This is the property they were purchasing. And according to this, Walt fulfilled his ambition, because by the time of his death, Disney had bought his father's old farm. Dude, look at this whole area upstairs here. Very different from the first time I came to this museum. There was barely anything up here but old newspapers. Well, they did have these models of Disneyland, but they were set up in another room and not as easy to look at because they were all smooshed together. Wow, I wish I could build models like this. I mean, that is some serious skill. Anyway, the last time I was here 2 years ago, I only had like 20 minutes to look around before they closed the place. So this is really my first good long look at their recreation renovation of Walt Disney's school, complete with desks just like the one downstairs, the old Disney farm porch, complete with tar and brush artwork courtesy of Walt Disney. Oh yeah, he painted on the side of the house in tar while his parents were in town. Something they were none too pleased about. Actually, downstairs, there's an audio recording of his parents talking about that story with Walt Disney. Oh, he tried to deny that it was him, but his parents still remembered. There's also one other little diorama, or whatever you call this. A little mock-up about Walt Disney's time working for the Pesman Rubin Commercial Art Studio. Walt Disney and Ub Iwerks both worked for Pesman Rubin and actually used this very light table, which was kept by one of the owners for all that time. That is a serious piece of Disney animation history. I mean, this light table was used by the guys that created Mickey Mouse. It's weird to think there'd be Snow White, no Sleeping Beauty, no Frozen even, if it weren't for that. And think of all the other artists and companies that Disney's work inspired and made possible. I mean, Walt made a big splash in his lifetime, but the ripples, they're still going to this day. And that all started here in Marceline. I mean, this is the town where his love of drawing really began. And the place he had his first paying customer, a neighbor named Doc Sherwood, paid him 25 cents to draw his horse, Rupert. So Walt Disney's artistic career literally began in this town. Oh man, maybe if I practice, I can become another Walt Disney. Let's see, let's get some chalk here. If I could fit in the desk. All right, now what to draw? What to draw? Okay. Voila. Art. Man, this used some pretty good imagination. I mean, who the heck looks like that? What a goofy character. I think I would have had a lot of promise in this world if only I had paid more attention to my studies. Wow. Dang it, math is hard. I quit. Guess you can't teach an old derp new tricks. Anyway, like I said, I've been here a number of times now, but there is so much in this museum that each time I come, there's something new to see, something new to learn about Walt Disney, his family, and his hometown, Marceline. And despite really stupid internet rumors and salacious biographies trying to make a cheap buck by tarnishing Walt's reputation, if you actually do the research, he was actually an outstanding and amazing person with one heck of a rags to riches American dream success story. And whether the haters like him or not, he's a big part of American history. So if you think about it, Marceline didn't just affect Walt. Because Walt Disney affected so many things, Marceline really changed the world. Oh man, I spent so much time in the museum wandering around looking at all of the different things in these exhibits that I almost ran out of time to see my favorite thing here. The display about the Midget Autopia. This car right here is from a long extinct Disneyland attraction. At one point in time, Disneyland had the Autopia, the Junior Autopia, and smallest of all, the Midget Autopia. This was the one for the really, really little kids. It's always been one of those lost Disneyland attractions that I am absolutely fascinated by. It was only actually in the park for about 9 or 10 years until they built It's a Small World at Disneyland. But what made this ride extra special is that when they took it out, rather than consigning it to the rubbish heap, Walt Disney made the decision to donate the entire ride, vehicles and all, to the city of Marceline. The only Disneyland ride to ever leave the park and open somewhere else. It operated for years here in Marceline down at a local park. On my first visit here, you could actually still see the track that Walt had them build out here for it. Sadly, due to lack of funds and lack of maintenance, the Midget Autopia had to close down out here as well. But the good news is all the pieces were carefully stored away. And even though the original track in Marceline was recently demolished, the story of the Midget Autopia in Marceline is far from over. Because ever since they opened up this museum in 2001, they've been talking about reopening the old Disneyland ride. And one of the main reasons I knew I had to swing by today is because they've finally made some progress. Look at this. It's finally happening. Just this year, they finally finished the new ride bed for the old Midget-Autopia. Wow, it is nearly identical layout-wise to the older version that Disney had built in Marceline, which was itself very similar to the original layout at Disneyland. Which means that once they add the little guide rails that power the ride and finish refurbishing all those little cars, the children of Marceline will once again be able to ride on their hometown's very own original Disneyland ride, just like all of those kids did back in the day. Spoiler alert, adults cannot fit in those cars, but I hope they let me try anyway. They have been working on making this project happen for at least the last 6 years that I've been coming here. So it is unbelievably exciting to finally see physical progress, a new queue building, a new track layout, and coolest of all, they took the original plaque from the old Walt Disney Park at the other end of town and brought it here for the new ride. Check that out. Relocated from the Magic Kingdom of Disneyland as a gift to the children of this community from Marceline's favorite sons, Walt and Roy Disney. July 1966, just a few months before Walt Disney passed away. Man, that is one incredible gift. There was never literally anything like it before. Disneyland isn't in the habit of just giving rides away. So this is unbelievably cool. As you are no doubt well aware, I am obsessed with vintage Disneyland, so I've just been walking this track around and around both directions over and over. It is just so unbelievably cool that this is going to come back to life here. Walt and Roy Disney's gift to their hometown. The original Disneyland Midget-Autopia, soon to roll again after nearly 40 years of being in storage. Oh man, I cannot wait to come out here and see this thing in action. Ooh, guess I spent a little too much time walking the track because the museum has officially closed up for the day now. But that's okay. After all, we still have one more stop to make because no trip to Marceline would be complete without driving a short way out of town to see the most important thing of all. Elias Disney's farmhouse, or as Walt Disney called it, home. Oh man, there's a great photo in the museum of Walt Disney standing right out here in front of his childhood home. Look at that, man. Obviously the exterior has changed quite a bit, but this is the house the Disney family lived in here in Marceline. The house Walt called home for the happiest years of his childhood. And if you came here with me on previous visits, you know the house isn't all. Because behind the house is the part of the farm Walt Disney claimed inspired him more than anywhere else. One of my favorite places on earth. The former site of Walt's dreaming tree. The huge cotton tree that stood right here that Walt used to sit underneath dreaming and learning how to draw. But also the epic replica of the old Disney barn. Well, technically it's a replica of a replica of a replica. The Disney film so dear to my heart was inspired largely by Walt's time in Marceline. And for that movie, Walt made sure they designed the barn to look like what he remembered his dad's barn looking like. Later, he had a recreation of that barn built in his backyard in Beverly Hills. You know, that's the one that's in Griffith Park today, the one that Walt called his happy place. And even later, this replica of that barn was built here on roughly-ish the site of the barn on the old Disney farm. The old house is just a few hundred yards away in those trees there. And old man Disney owned all of this. And the Disney farm may have been short-lived. Remember, they were only here for about 5.5 years. But the memories Walt Disney made out here under his dreaming tree and in the barn where he played and held mock circuses and even rode on the backs of pigs. Oh yeah, Walt Disney was apparently a great pig rider. Would stay with him the rest of his life and influence nearly everything he did. The small town values and good intentions, the nostalgia, the family-friendly content. For Walt, it all began here. And even though this is private property, it is open to the public 365 days a year. And if you're willing to come back here past all the bumblebees flying around, don't know if you can see them, but there's a lot, you too can step inside the barn and, like hundreds and hundreds of other people have, leave your mark at a place of epic Disney history. My name's just there over the door. Well, actually, I signed it somewhere else in this barn on my first visit, but I couldn't find it again. So really, I have 2, but actually 3. Because one year at the D23 convention, the Boyhood Hometown Museum brought these benches to Anaheim for people to sign and then place them right here inside the Disney barn. Oh, I love coming to this place. Just thinking about how Walt Disney was once a little boy out on his father's farm with cockamamie dreams of being an artist. I find that really inspiring and very emotional, because if you spend the time to read all these little messages to Walt, you'll see that he has very deeply touched a lot of lives. He, his artists, and the company they founded have made millions and millions, maybe billions of people very happy. Those are the kind of footsteps I would love to walk in. Oh yeah, it's a great place. Wait a minute, what's that noise? It's a mouse! There's a mouse running around in here. Mickey Mouse! Hi, Mickey Mouse! Oh, you guys, the original Mickey Mouse! Oh, let's leave him alone. I think we frightened him enough already. Anyway, as I was saying, it's a great place, but it's also an enclosed place, and it's 90 degrees outside. Woo! Feels like Florida in here. Let's go. I was expecting warmth, just not that much. Oh, the bumblebees. Nice bumbles. Nice bumbles. Oh, I'm not here to steal your honey. Wait, do they make honey? Anyway, to Walt Disney, this little patch of farmland was paradise. And to those of us who are fans of the man and his legacy, it's a pretty darn important place as well. It is pretty crazy how little is left of the Dreaming Tree now. Just a couple of years ago, there was a big giant stump here and a lot of branches. I have a couple of pieces of it at home, and there's a big piece that you're allowed to touch in the museum. But even cooler than that, some saplings were taken from the original tree and planted at Disney World. So when the old one fell, Disney World donated this, the son of the Dreaming Tree. It was planted with soil from the Magic Kingdom and water from the rivers of America, and it looks like it's doing pretty well, getting bigger and stronger every year. And who knows, maybe our children and their children will come out here and dream dreams just like Walt did right out on the farm. All right, well, to be honest with you, I wasn't actually planning on coming to Marceline today, but I found out there was going to be bad weather, crazy storms for the next couple of days out here. And even though it took me hours and hours and hours of driving up from old Route 66 today, I couldn't help it. I had to come visit Marceline again. But now that today is coming to a close, probably time to jump in the car and head to my hotel. And while there is a small, very cute, very old-timey motel in Marceline, but I've already made my lodging plans for tonight. So we're saying goodbye to Main Street, USA, and driving across pretty much most of the state of Missouri to get to another one of my favorite places in the world, the boyhood hometown of Mark Twain, Hannibal, Missouri. There's people everywhere. They're having some sort of little concert down there. I've never been here when there's so many people in town. Then again, I've also never been here when the levee gates are closed and the river's so high. Wow, it's good to be back. Even with the crazy loud country music ruckus going on in the background, I could stand here and stare at Old Man River for hours. The father of waters, the big muddy, the mighty Mississippi. Actually, I changed my mind. That is a little too much music. Well, hopefully we'll get to explore the town at least a little bit while I'm here. We'll see. Supposedly some big storms are coming this way, so it might rain out my opportunity to do so. But either way, you know what? Even if this is the only look at the river I get, I'm still happy. It may sound insane, but I'm here for Twain. Heck, I love Hannibal so much, I'd live in this town if I could get away with it. I don't think my mom would like that very much. So for the meantime, I'll have to settle for a quick gander at the old Clemens place, and then hotel and sleep well. Thank you guys for coming with me today on this very unplanned adventure. It's been at least 2 days since I've laid down for more than 3 hours, so I'm gonna go in there and lay down. But if I ever wake up again, I'll see you on the next Random Land adventure. Bye-bye. I love this town so much. There's a lot of bugs flying around. The river's too high. Go back to the river, bugs. You know, that story about Walt Disney and Doc Sherwood having Disney draw his horse Rupert? The horse's name is Rupert. It's kind of weird, isn't it? I mean, a horse named Rupert? That's a people name. I'm gonna ask one of these local yokels or farmer maybe around here. Let's see if we can get some more information about that. Hold on.
Well, you know, back then, wasn't strange for a man to have a horse named Rupert. Matter of fact, wasn't strange for a man to have a horse wife, a second horse, you know. You get married, you start a family, then you have a horse wife. You have your regular wife, then your horse wife. Back wasn't unusual if you had a big enough bed, a horse bed as we called it back then, to have your horse sleep in the same bed with you. You wanted to sleep with its knees locked in the forest, or in the woods, or in the field? I wouldn't want that. I'd want a horse bed with my horse. It's not weird. It's warmth. A warm horse. What more does a man want? What more does a man need? Horse is a man's best friend, you know. More than a dog. You can ride a horse to the store, get your sundries. You can have a couple whiskeys and play poker with your horse. Wasn't weird. It was manly, you know, just some horse cuddling.
And there you have it. Knowledge is power. Whew, I just walked back to do a little video for some Patreon people, a little Patreon video. And then I walked back again because I forgot to take a cell phone pic, you know, a pic for mom at the old barn. But can I just say, nothing funny at the end of this video. Can I just say how cool it is that this is private property, that the old Disney house is somebody's private house that they live in, and that they opened up this part of their property, not just for the barn to be built, but for this little path to be open, and for visitors to come 365 days a year on their property that they've got to take care of here, with this little parking area that actually gets nicer every year. How freaking cool is that? And they have a little sign in front of the house. A lot of people wouldn't want that sign there. They don't want people knocking on the door. They don't want people going in their house. So a lot of people would just take the sign down. I wouldn't do that. But if it's still the same lady, the very nice lady that I met who lives in that house a few years ago, so cool. Also works at the museum. Just what a kind-hearted soul. The people who volunteer their time, energy, and property to make things like this possible, to come and explore, share with you guys, and then for all of us to be able to visit and enjoy, just partake a little bit in some living history out here. That is fantastic. Those people deserve a lot of praise and credit. And since, you know, they don't want to be bothered in their house, I'm not going to go up and knock on the door to thank them. But just in case they ever see it, I really want to sincerely thank the people on whom's properties is we do things like this. Also to all of you guys for watching, and for all the people who come out here in the Disney spirit, volunteer, help build things, rebuild things, and visit without destroying the place. That is so cool. That is so cool. You guys are some of the best people on earth. Thank you for watching. I will see you guys on the next Random Land video. Unless you're on Patreon, then I'll see you in weird little podcasts and other videos also from this trip. Whew. Also snack up. I should say snatch up. Snag up some sick merch over at livefastdiepoor.spreadshirt.com. I'm looking into alternatives for even sicker merch coming up. So who knows how long that merch will last? I don't know. Could be there forever. Could be temporary. I'm just putting that out there because it's getting about t-shirt season. I probably shouldn't have worn this jacket. I'm very sweaty and there's a fly on my nose. And that's all. Yeah. Yeah. They put one of yours in the hospital. You put one of theirs in the morgue. That's the Chicago way. So ask yourself, what are you prepared to do?